Okay, so I'm not wearing this t-shirt deliberately, by the way. It's just coincidence from the London 2012 Olympics. But I want to talk about racism in the UK, but also I may as well just incorporate other videos into the subject nature of this video. What I'm talking about is videos that purport to show racist incidents. I'm thinking about the UK, but this really applies around the world as well. If you look at YouTube in particular, and you just type in something like, I don't know, British racism or British racist or racist in America or whatever, um, there's a huge number of videos that show, let's say, incidents, usually in public transport, sometimes in restaurants or other public places, and they purport to show racist abuse taking place. Now, I've seen a lot of these videos and it makes depressing viewing, has to be said. Um, as someone who's been in mixed relations, I have to be honest, in a situation where thankfully I never had to put up with it, but if I was with my girlfriend, and I'm not going to go into the personal details, but suffice to say, I've been in a mixed relationship with someone from another ethnic group. If I was in a mixed relationship, and I mean, if I was in that situation and some drunk decided to hurl abuse at us, I honestly don't know if I could keep my cool. If it was a woman, I'd be really getting into her verbally. And if it was a man, I don't know if I could keep my cool and hold back. I couldn't guarantee that. I really couldn't. And I'm not saying that to be machismo. I'm saying it because my honest sentiments about this. I mean, I have contempt for people who abuse total strangers in any situation, even aside the racist thing. Just people who can't keep their mouth shut with when strangers are walking past them in the street or whatever. And there's plenty of white on white incidents of this happening, black on black, and so on. So it's not always a racial thing. You just get general yobbish behaviour in this country. I believe it's a huge problem in Britain. But when I see videos of some drunk or not even always drunk, sometimes people just laying into complete strangers for no other reason than they are from an ethnic minority or they're from another country. It's disgusting. And honestly, if I witnessed it, I don't think I could stand by for a start. And again, this isn't to big myself up, it's just my honest sentiment. Um, I have been in a few situations where I stood up for people, not necessarily in racist situations, but I've seen people being bullied and have, you know, spoken out. So I'm only going by my own history. But I just can't understand that mentality that people can't control themselves and they have to lay into total strangers. Um, I can't understand that. But yeah, one thing I do want to say that is important though about these sort of videos. Firstly, I suppose it's appropriate to mention a few that I've came across. There's one showing a Londoner. Um, he's quite young, I'm guessing, mid 30s, and he's standing up to this older guy on a bus in Liverpool. The older guy's maybe, I don't know, late 60s. The older guy's mouthing off, and the video purports to say that the older guy is racially abusing other passengers. Now, the Londoner is standing up to the old man. The Londoner doesn't look like a pushover. He looks like, quite a big guy himself. The Liverpudlian is mouthing off about being a security guy for years. One thing I would say about the whole thing about age, I don't think age is an excuse to be a racist or an excuse to be any sort of bad character. If anything, if you're older, you've less excuses because you've had more time. Not to have excuses, you've had more time to learn about the world and so forth and so on. So I totally reject this idea that if someone is in their 70s or even 80s, oh, that gives them a green light to be racist. Um, I appreciate it's harder to lay into an 80-year-old, but there's no excuses and they should be shamed just as much as a young racist. Um, But like I say, firstly, respect to that Londoner. There was another video that showed some woman in, I believe it was Ipswich, just laying in the foreign student for no reason. It was a hospital waiting queue, and whatever people think about the NHS and foreign staff and so on, well, that's a point. Foreign nurses treat British patients. They save lives. Um, and yes, there's legitimate questions about English and communication and so on. Those are legitimate questions, but there's an ugly racism that is going on in this country right now, and it's irrefutable. But anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent. That's maybe for another video. What I do want to say though is one thing that's very important with these videos. I sort of see them as a good thing because they expose what is going on, and without being recorded, you know, if we don't know about problems, we can't deal with problems. Um, People might say, well, the fact that it's being filmed is aggravating the racist, but I sort of take the view, well, they're going to be racist anyway. It might be aggravating them, but you know, in this country, hate crime is, and that includes harassing people. It's a criminal offence now. Filming could be acting as evidence. So, in that sense, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that people should kind of use it as a format of entertainment. So, if they're posting it to YouTube, it should be for the right reason, i.e., exposing racism and not just trying to get views or whatever. Um, I also think in situations where the racist has shown genuine remorse, that should be acknowledged. Um, One thing that concerns me though about videos, and this isn't just in racist videos, it's in any situation, what you get is a snapshot of what's happened. And I'm not saying that it's entirely misleading, but you have to be a little bit careful because they rarely show the full context. Now, in cases where someone is mouthing off and they're clearly being racist, it's hard to argue with what you're saying that, it's outright racism. But sometimes I do wonder, is there something that's happened just before the filming begins that we don't know about? That's not to condone racism, but I do think the context is quite important. And the truth is, we are only seeing one side. Having said that, if someone is using racially derogatory terms and saying things like "go back home" and so on, it's not going to help their case. Racism is an incredibly sensitive subject, and I detest racism with every fiber of my being. But we have to be careful and define racism for what it is, and not just say that, not every situation where you have, say, a white person arguing with a black person or an Asian person is automatically about racism. It may just be a disagreement about something. And I have also spoken out against people who I feel. I mean, I'll give an example. I made a video in 2014 where I was attacking Thai royalists in the UK, bringing their politics into the UK. Now, I was very vocal about that, and I said they should get the hell out. Now, my reasoning for that had nothing to do with racism because I was actually defending a Thai woman living in London from their extremism. So we do have to be very, very careful to understand the context in all these situations. Um, so, for example, what I was talking about was nothing to do with ethnicity, it was to do with politics, and it was to do with ideology and extremism. So it's very, very, very important people understand context. And I use the same principle for, like I say, extreme Chinese nationalists who come to Western countries and think they could do what they want. Um, so as a white guy, I am absolutely vocal against white racists, and I will always, always, always defend my Asian friends or my black friends or friends from any part of the world who are harassed or bullied by white racists, and I would not hold back. Um, Without being machismo, I wouldn't hold back. But by the same token, I also say to people who come to other countries, like I've said in the other video, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So if you come to a country like Britain and you have a certain set of values that contradicts Western secular values, then you're not going to get much sympathy from me. If, for example, you have Islamist thinking and you think that a woman is inferior to a man, or you think you could bully gay people or whatever, um, in that situation, the bigotry is entirely on your part. Um, so this does work both ways. That's a very important caveat to all of this. Um, yes, there are white racists out there, and there are far right vile organizations like National Action that are basically a virus in society. But by the same token, there is Islamist groups, and they're also a virus in society. Wherever extremism exists, whether it be domestic or whether it be from another country, it needs to be tackled. That's why I staunchly believe that we do need to be practical when it comes to the issue of migration, because if we don't do something about this, all that will do is foster the far right groups, provide them with an excuse. We're facing a very, very critical situation in this country. We're in a wilderness right now with Brexit. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. I don't think even the leaders know what's going to go on here. And with the number of racial attacks that have been happening, there's apparently been a 57% increase in reported hate crimes. Now, it could just be because that's because they're reported, but that's still disturbing. And as a white Briton, I feel uneasy about it. I'm worried about our reputation in other countries. Like the global community is going to think, "Oh, Britain's a really racist country." Um, we have a racist problem, and there's no point sweeping it under the carpet and pretending that we don't. But there's 65 million people in this country, and there are millions and millions of decent Britons who don't accept this and who stand up against it. I'm going to do something today. I'm going to go to the Polish shop in my city in Sunderland, and I'm going to buy something from them. And without being too sentimental about it, I'm going to try and give give them a sense of we're not all like this, and don't don't feel. I mean, my city, Sunderland, was one of the cities that voted to leave. And to be quite frank, there is definitely racism in this city. That doesn't mean Sunderland's a racist city, of course not. But there is racist sentiments in this city, and I'm going to do my small part. I'm going to go to the Polish shop. I'm going to buy something. I need coffee anyway. They make good coffee. Um, I'm going to go there and I'm going to try and send out the message. Look, I'm not against you guys. As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome here. Um, I also buy big issues off Romanian vendors. I'm not saying this to be saintly or holier than thou or anything like that. I just think it's important that rather than just talk about problems, we actually act and do something about it. So I want to play my small role in, trying to reassure foreigners living in this country that, we're not all racist, and please don't feel intimidated about living in the UK. I also frequently go to a Chinese um, shop here. So anyway, go round this up. I guess the main point of this video, I'm talking about racism, but I'm also talking these videos that we see online. They are a snapshot of racist problems, not just in Britain, but around the world. And it isn't just the Western countries. I mean, there was a video of that guy in Taiwan who laid into the white guy because he had a Taiwanese girlfriend. He was a racist. There's no question about it. Asian countries, I should say, East Asian countries, not so much Southeast Asia, but Japan, Korea, and China and Taiwan do have a tolerance, I think, of racism in a way that's yeah, I think it's just as much a problem in those countries. I mean, what that guy done and came up and harassed a couple, um, that happens in the West as well. But there's in the West, it's definitely seen for what it is. I think in Asian societies is a little bit more tolerated. Although having said that, to be fair, there were Taiwanese people condemning the guy's behavior. Um, I think the difference is in Western countries, there's very strict laws against this. I'm not sure what the legislation is. As far as I know, in a country like Japan, there's no legislation against racism, which is really unfortunate. Same with Taiwan, and they need to do something about that. They need to start taking this seriously because that video that I just referred to proves that it is a problem. Um, so I don't accept that racism is only confined to one part of the world or only one race. In fact, that attitude is racist in itself. Anyway, the final point I want to make is with these videos, yes, they offer a snapshot, but I do think it is important that when people post those videos, they need to provide the full context. And I'm not saying that means they're void or anything like that. I'm just saying I'm slightly wary of that because we don't always know the full context. That's all I'm going to say. But if you are opposed to racism, if you see racist incidents happening, I'm not saying you need to get involved because you may be dealing with someone who's, on edge or potentially violent. I'm not expecting people to necessarily get involved, but at the very least, call the police on your mobile phone or something because this should not be tolerated. Nobody, nobody should feel intimidated